We just rather go out and play an aggressive hockey game, but it's just getting out of hand.
Okay, Wally, you're on your way to the dressing room. We'll keep in touch and find out what does happen to you. Right now, let's go from Pistany back home to Canada, where Brian Williams and Don Cherry are standing by.
All right, thank you, Fred Walker. I agree with Sherry Bassin. A black mark for international hockey. There should be headlines over this incident. Don Cherry, it's the first time Don and Sherry talked about they were surprised. We looked at each other here in the studio. I couldn't believe the Russians were fighting back.
Oh, I like that. That was good. I'm surprised that it really hasn't happened before in international hockey. The kids said it after. A lot of people don't realize. If you saw during the fight, there was a lot of kicking going on. The one thing we don't do, and you're right, I feel sorry because you know whose fault it's going to be. It's not going to be the Russians' fault. It's not the USA's fault when it starts. It's always Canada. And the papers tomorrow, I can see black mark for Canada. No matter how good we play, they'll jump all over it. It'll be absolutely beautiful how it's always our fault all the time. But the kid was right at the end. A lot of kicking going along in this game, and you don't take kicking.
The officials were totally out of control. They lost control. They were out of control themselves, it appeared from here. Are you surprised they simply withdrew from the ice? Because, I mean, this was not a National Hockey League fight where I don't think they go at it 100%.
Wow.
This was a knock-em-down, drag-em-out, pure four brawl. I thought someone might get hurt.
Well, what happened? They've never, ever been involved in anything like this before. The referee never saw anything like what. He didn't know what was going on. He just got off the ice. He didn't want to get hurt. Those guys didn't want to get hurt. That's why they got off the ice. But they didn't lose control. They never had control of it. And again, they didn't know what to do.
All right. According to the trainer, and again, we see this like you people do at home, it appeared the Soviet players left the bench. We don't know who's at fault. What do you do?
See, the big thing there is the Russians knew they have no chance. They're out of it. Right. And you're right. You never saw them ever fight before, but they're smart. I've never said a Russian is dumb. They're not dumb. They've got nothing to lose. They knew that we had to win by 5. Have you ever seen them fight back? They were goading our guys all the time, and we do not accept high sticks. We do not spears in the back. It's our Canadian nature not to take that stuff. The Russians were smart, giving them a jab, hoping they'd start something like that. They were the first off the bench, and we fell right into it. And I know it's you again, you people sitting home in your living rooms, having it all nice and quiet, maybe having a pop or two or a sandwich or something. You see something. How could these fellows do that? You don't know what they've been through over there and what they're going through. So don't say it's a black mark against our players, please.
It's a black mark against international hockey. I'm not saying it's a black mark against Canada right now because we don't know who started this fight, but it is a black mark against international hockey. What do you do if you're the coach now when you take the players in the dressing room?
Well, right away, he's got them under control. Bert will have them under control. They're kids, 17 years old, 16 years old. He said, we fell into it, guys. We've got to forget it now. We've got to go out there no matter what they do from here on in. We've got to go out and get those goals because we don't want the silver, we want the gold. Now, I hope he remembers if he gets the, he's 4 goals. He needs 4 goals. I hope he remembers near the end of the game he can pull that goalie and try to get that 5th goal.
All right, Grapes, thank you. Right now, we are going to return live to Pistany in Czechoslovakia. Hopefully, Don Whitman and Sherry Bassin can sort out some of the problems that are still going on right now in the arena. Don? All right, Don Whitman, an ugly, disgraceful incident. I'm watching it in our Toronto Control Center like you people are at home. What concerned me was the total lack of control by the officials as they pulled off the ice. This was a down-and-out pure four brawl, folks. This is not a National Hockey League fight where players don't get hurt. I was greatly concerned that some young man would be severely injured. I don't think disgraceful incident is too strong a term. Don Cherry?
Well, that's what happens when you get in a fight, Brian. Somebody can get hurt. That's why you get into fights.
But we talked about this. This was an ugly fight.
Well, let me just put it this way to you. The Russians sent his players on. And their whole players were out there. We had 5 guys out there, 6 guys out there, and say about 18 guys were beaten up in 5. What would you think of Bert Templeton? He had to send the guys on. The team that goes on first is the team. I've always said this in the National Hockey League too. I've always said this. The team that goes on first should the team that should really be racked.
All right, we're going to see a highlight. Hold it for just a minute, fellas. Don, I'm not laying blame because we weren't there. What I am saying was this was a vicious fight. The officials were out of control. I'm surprised someone didn't get hurt.
Well, yeah, I know. You saw all that they're fighting and everything, but as you saw, most of the guys had their gloves on. I mean, some of them didn't know. The Russians didn't know how to fight. How the Russians going to know how to fight? They were fighting with their gloves on. How are you going to get hurt? They were pawing at one another. When it looked bad, they were wrestling around. The worst part of the whole thing was one of our guys had a Russian, and as the Russian went down, he kicked him in the stomach. Now, that stuff, that guy should really get it.
We're never going to agree on this. The Russians
I'm not
know
saying
how
it's
to
good.
fight, and
I'm
it
not saying it's great, but
somebody could have got hurt.
Absolutely.
All right, Don,
That's
let's take a look at the incident that supposedly started this brawl tonight in Pistany. Here it is, Don.
Well, I think it starts when the Russian goalie makes the save, and one of our guys come in. It's been going on and on. A little shot. This is where, well, I don't know, a little shot right here. But just before that, a little shot. Yeah, I see him. He knocks him down. What's the matter with that? There was nothing wrong with that. A little check. Now what happens? Now the guy comes in and gives the guy a little shot. Now, that wasn't much. You see the Russian take the first shot and knock our guy down. Now, there you are. There it is right there. There's 12 pointing at him. He did it. Now, what are you supposed to do to that? The guy was standing there. The guy gave him a shot, knocked him down. So what are you supposed to do?
We've had an interesting call, Don, from a viewer, Don Whitman and Sherry Basson, saying this is the first time they can recall this happening in international hockey. A viewer has called our control center here in Toronto saying that the Soviets were involved in a bench-clearing brawl with the Czechoslovakian team in 1978, 2 years ago in 1984 with the Americans, and both those fights occurred in Prague, Czechoslovakia.
Well, yeah, like I said earlier, the Russians got nothing to lose. They're laughing. I mean, this was planned. There's no doubt about it. The Russian coach, he never fed his players for a couple of days. He'll be drinking water and bread in Siberia after this game. But he's got nothing to lose. Send him out, have a little thing. I'll tell you, Canada's going to end up at the short end of this, I'll tell you.
I'll tell you something. Whichever team left the bench first, the coach is definitely to blame.
Absolutely.
Because in international hockey, we should explain again to the viewers, the players have to go past the coach to get to the ice.
That's the old story. I remember when I was over there in 80 in Sweden, they told me that I had to have the bench in the back and I had to stand in front. We went and got screwdrivers, ripped the thing up, put it in front, and stood in back. Because if you've noticed, during the game, the Canadian team is always standing up next to the boards looking out. So you have them for 2 hours standing up looking over the boards. You should take those benches up for you coaches that ever go over them again. Take them out, put them, stand back like we do, and the guys can hop over and away they go. Sure, it's the Russians' fault. Absolutely. You send the guy on first, he's the guy that should pay.
All right, Don, it is 4-2 for our Canadian juniors over the Soviet Union. I don't care who started it. An ugly, disgraceful incident has disrupted this hockey game. Stay with us. Sports Weekend will continue live right after these messages. Looking at the assistant Canadian coach, very, very disappointed. Both teams, that is Pat Burns, have been disqualified, as they should be, from this World Junior Tournament for an ugly incident, as rotten a brawl as you will ever see in hockey. You know, reacting to some of the things said in Czechoslovakia a few minutes ago, I realize these young men feel badly about this, but that's not the point. They should all be thrown out of this tournament because the rules of international hockey are very, very clear. There is no fighting. Don Cherry's in our Toronto control studio with me. He obviously does not agree with me. We have had literally hundreds of calls from you people from British Columbia to Newfoundland all the way up to the Yukon wanting to see the beginning of this fight. Now, we're not glorifying fighting. We're not going to play the entire brawl. But journalistically, I think it is right to go back and take a look at where it appeared that this fight started. If we can roll that videotape.
Well,
Don Cherry, let's have one more look at the incident which happened about 45 minutes ago.
I don't know where you say appeared, Brian. I don't know where you get that. Look, we've cleaned the ice and everything, but we're going. Now watch, they're going in the corner here, and while they get a roll, I'm just saying, Canadian kids will not take what comes up. We've been brought up not with a slap in the face and a punch in the nose. We do not take stuff like this. Now what? He didn't do anything. He just went to the guy, watch him get up and punch him with a nice left right to the thing. Now who started the fight? Now, what are you supposed to do? Right. Since we're 3 or 4 years old, we do not take punches in the mouth like that.
All right, calm down. Let's keep the
And by the way, wait a minute, keep the, yeah, okay, we're going to see it again. And by the way, when we went off this here the last time, I told you Gunnar Schmunner would give us, and we'd come out in the short end. Did I not say that? Everybody was talking, the game was going.
Not a matter of coming out in the short end. Both teams should be thrown out of the
I'm not talking about that. Whose fault is it? I'm getting here black mark because, you know, Canada will get blamed for this. Canada will get blamed for it. The Russians won't get blamed. You know that. It's coming up here.
There's no question that both teams should be blamed for this incident, regardless of who started it, Don. There's no justifying.
I'm going to shock people out there. I'm going to shock people out there, and I'm going to say it because I want to say it. They asked me on here, I'm going to say it. If I had been coaching there, and Bert's going to take a lot of heat from this. Bert Templeton's going to take a lot of heat. He never had them under control. I will say this. If he hadn't sent his players over there when 19 Russians were out there, then he wouldn't have been a man. Now, he's going to feel bad. He lost the medal and the whole thing like that. But I'd like to ask him, when we're having a pop in a week, if he would have felt better keeping his team on the bench and watching the Russians beat up the 5. No way. So we didn't get the medal, but at least we stood up for it.
Both teams have been disqualified, and that is as it should be, a disgraceful incident. There's no justifying it. I don't care who went over the boards first. It appears the Soviets did. I'm not blaming the Canadians. Both teams are wrong. Both teams have been disqualified, and they should be disqualified. We talk about the feelings of these young men. These young men had better learn, and learn quickly. You don't go through life conducting Pier 4 brawls. Stay with us. Sports Weekend will continue right after this.